Hello everyone, my name is Alex. I'm a 2000 rated over-the-board chess player, and in this series we're going from 1000 to 2000 leveling chess.com rapid games where I'll be explaining my thought process as best as I possibly can for your education and entertainment. And today we are facing a Caro Kann defense. As many of you know who have been around for a while, I love the Caro Kann with the black pieces, and we have it against Tsuki. Tsuki? I don't know, whatever. I think Vietnamese, right? Yeah. And I'm going to play b3, which is known as the Euwe Attack, named after Max Euwe, which I think is the correct way to pronounce it. I believe he was Dutch, and I mean, Dutch names are just very difficult. And this is very similar to the b3 French system, in which you sacrifice the pawn on e4, and then you try to win it back with moves like knight to c3, knight ge2, knight g3, and queen to e2. And we pretty much will win this pawn back no matter what, and just get a very interesting game from it. I will link this video to two playlists, one of them being the previous episodes of the speedrun, and the other being the games that I have played in the b3 French, just because this is a very similar system. And my opponent goes d4, so he doesn't accept the sacrifice, and instead pushes the pawn. Most people, when they want to reject the sacrifice, will play knight to f6, and then we'll get some interesting French structures. But my opponent goes d4. And let me think a second. How am I supposed to play against this? I think I'm supposed to play a quick c3. But I may have to throw in knight to f3 first. I believe that's the way to play it. So we're just going to put more pressure on this pawn. Of course, e5 can't be played because our knight controls that square, which is why I think that knight f3 first is the correct move. Because if my opponent pushes c5, which is pretty much his only move, then I suppose we can try to claim that he's wasting time pushing pawns, and in the meantime, we're just developing pieces, right? This is a very strange opening, I'm fully aware of that, but I really like it because it is a bit strange. Here, I believe we should be giving a check and then playing like c3 to challenge the pawn. There's a lot of different things we can do here. We could play it with like bishop c4 even, and just go d3 and castle, but then our bishop is a little bit locked out of the game. So if bishop b5, knight c6, c3, I like that position. If my opponent plays d3 to try and like shut everything down, we probably have like knight e5 playing on the fact the knight is pinned and the pawn is also under attack, so we should just win material like that. If bishop b5, bishop d7 though, then I don't really know if I want to exchange. I mean, I could try to justify exchanging and going d3, but my bishop is still not very good. I probably will have to rotate it via c1, and this diagonal is just pretty weak, right? So here, if bishop here, don't know, I'm not really convinced. The immediate c3, d3, knight e5, maybe I can do it like that, and the pawn actually looks impossible to defend. So yeah, I think I'll play c3. Again, e5 can't be played. If knight c6, then probably bishop b5, and we just move order my opponent into a favourable version of the immediate bishop b5, essentially. I hope that makes sense. These are very strange opening systems, or like opening positions that you can get with these early like b3 responses to the French and the Caro Kann, which is part of the reason that I play them, just because they're very, very strange, and I honestly have very good results in them. Like, I think I've drawn to a FIDE master in an over-the-board tournament before in the b3 French. I should have beaten him. I just panicked later on, as you do against higher-rated players. Okay, bishop g4 is not something I expected. I mean, I suppose it is a move. Maybe I should have expected it. I can probably just play h3? If this? Take? I don't know, that seems a bit strange. I could throw in bishop b5 check. I don't see how that can be a bad move. Let's throw it in. My bishop doesn't really want to go to e2, I don't think. That seems too slow. So let's do this. And then I can probably just take, no? Ooh, is there some weird queen traps here? Something like take, knight takes. Like bishop takes, knight takes. If pawn takes, bishop takes, the queen has to block. That kind of thing. Maybe that exists. Take. Queen c2. If bishop takes f3, I can take on c6 and I'm winning. Yeah, I think I should take regardless. I don't think that can be a bad move. I don't think that can be a bad move. If takes queen c2, rook c8, knight e5, bishop d7, then I can take on d4. Knight b4 might be a problem, though. So it'll be a double attack on my queen, and c2 is incredibly weak. Oh no, because in that line I can take the bishop. In that line I can take the bishop. Sorry, I know this is very complicated. Apologies if it's difficult to follow along. I will cover these intricacies in the analysis. My issue with the move knight to e5 is after bishop d1, knight to c6, my opponent doesn't really have to take me. He doesn't have to. He might be able to get away with a move like queen b6 in that position. And although I can do something like knight d4, king d8, I'm down a queen and I can't win it back. So I don't think that works. Queen c2 looks better. Because this is a threat, now that we're unpinning the knight with tempo, right? Again, you can't take this, because I will take, queen d7, queen a8, queen d8, and then I'll just trade queens, and I'm up a rook. And a pawn. So you can't do that. Even if I don't win material from all of this, let's say my opponent goes bishop d7 immediately, that might be the correct idea. We're probably going to win d4 regardless. Right? We probably win the pawn no matter what black does, and then we can castle quickly. So let's say something like bishop d7, knight d4. Okay, no, maybe that doesn't work. That might not work. We may have to go for bishop d7, bishop c6, bishop c6, then knight d4. And our queen protects e4, and we're also attacking the bishop. So here, rook c8. Where do we put our queen there? Maybe we have to put it back on d1, although that hangs the e4 pawn. So maybe we have to go queen d3 there, which looks ugly. Oh no, then e5. e5, and there's a pin. Okay, on bishop d7, though, I suppose we don't have to take. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to do anything. I mean, obviously, I would love to win a pawn. But even if we were to play d3 in that position, right, bishop d7, d3, preparing knight d2, or even castling, black doesn't really have a clear plan, right? I mean, if bishop d7, d3, a6, take, and then we take on d4, then it's a little bit different, because our queen always has the d2 square, and e4 is always defended by a pawn on d3. So that looks pretty good. Also, what is very nice about this position is just how weak this diagonal is, which is a common thing in the Caro Kann. When the c-pawn exits the c-file, the c-pawn's gone, and the d-pawn is advanced, but the e-pawn is still in place, so the king never has the e7 square if it needs it, right? Meaning that this diagonal is just left weak, because there's no pawn to put on c6, and there's no pawn on d7 to block the diagonal, because, I mean, in this game, they've already advanced very far up the board and gotten traded off. creating quite a target on the d4 square. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, and you haven't already, please drop a like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. It really helps to keep me motivated making these daily videos for you guys. I'm kind of putting off my dissertation work today to be recording this, to be totally honest. So I hope you guys appreciate it. But this is a very interesting game, and don't worry, I will be able to get it done in time. I just probably should have prioritized that, but chess, well, my dissertation is actually about chess, so, you know, that's fine. My opponent's taking a while here, which I don't really blame him for, because this is a very difficult position to navigate. I mean, there's going to be a lot of moves in this position that look natural, that just don't work. For example, rook c8, I don't think that works. Probably knight e5, or even just taking on d4, and black is going to be in trouble. Because even if he can consolidate the position, again, if I get d3, and I win this d-pawn, and I can castle, black has very little chances in terms of compensation, because his development is terrible. This is one of the problems the Caro Kann can sometimes face, is the development being too slow because of placing an emphasis on moving the pawns in the center. And I mean, back in this position with this gambit, right, you really should take as the black pieces. You really should be taking that. And just dealing with the consequences. And yeah, my opponent goes rook c8, but this does feel a little bit wrong. I thought bishop d7 was kind of necessary, and I know it's ugly. But okay. Well, these are the two moves that should be immediately obvious to you. So I would encourage you to try and figure out which is better, as I also try to figure out which is the better move. Because knight e5 hits the bishop, hits the d7 square, which could be useful, and hits the knight, right? That's the benefit of the knight e5. The benefit of knight d4 is we pick up the pawn, and we attack the knight still, but we neither attack the bishop or the d7 square. So the difference is, if knight e5, bishop d7, which is the natural move, well, I suppose then we can still... oh, no, we can't take, sorry, because the knight's unpinned. So here, we could take the bishop, and after queen takes, the knight is still pinned to the queen. But then, what's our follow-up? I don't know what our follow-up is. We seem to run out of steam. So, if knight d4, of course the knight can't take because of the pin. If a move like a6 is played, then I think we just take, and the pawn has to take, and then we just drop the bishop back to, like, c4, and we're completely winning. I think that... and also we open up this diagonal for the bishop. We give this knight to c3 square if we want it. That's got to be the move. And if he and bishop d7, then take. Queen d1? Black doesn't really have anything. Knight f6, knight c3. e6, and we just castle, or we even push e5. So that looks pretty good. I don't think there's anything better than just trading on c6, to be honest. So, yeah, let's play it. Of course, the queen can't take because of the bishop defending that square. The knight is not controlling this square because it is pinned, of course. So we're up a pawn. We're up a pawn. But we do need to be a little bit cautious about the rook's alignment with the queen. Our king is still in the center, but it's pretty safe. It's pretty safe. Okay. Now, my opponent is threatening to take my knight on d4, because that will also open up an attack on my bishop, which would mean I lose a piece. We could take, but I am also very tempted to just drop the knight back and say that your bishop is silly. Although maybe... oh no, then my opponent has moves like knight b4, and that causes some problems for me because of my queen. So, yeah, I should probably take... If pawn takes, of course, we just move our bishop. The c-file is shut, and we're completely winning. I don't think we have anything better than taking. If bishop c4, we still have issues with this alignment. So let's take. And maybe we just go knight c3, actually. Maybe we just go knight c3. Knight c3, knight f6, d3 should be fine. Preparing queen e2 to unpin. Yeah, let's do that. So what we've done now is we've come out of the opening phase. We're entering the middle game, right? And clearly we have an advantage. We're up a pawn, and we have decent development. Okay, e6, that's perfectly reasonable. Maybe not the most accurate, but it's reasonable. And now we need to consolidate our position. So I don't think we have anything better than castling. Let's just castle. And my plan is probably d3. E5 makes no sense because black will just jump in, playing on the fact my knight is pinned. So let's go d3. Bishop to b4. Oh, wait, have I just allowed that? No, we should have rook c1. That should be fine. That should be fine. And then we're preparing to move our queen away. I probably shouldn't have allowed it, though. Although I'm not sure what else I could have done, to be honest. No, this is probably fine. I mean, you know, if bishop b4, yeah, he goes for it. Rook c1 should be the move. Our pawn is restricting this knight's access. So my opponent can't really put much more pressure on. If rook c1, queen c7, we even have knight to b5 in that position, counterattacking. Potentially. Potentially. Although queen b6 might be a problem. Yeah, that's probably an issue. Rook c1, if bishop takes, queen moves. I mean, just queen b2 should be fine. That would be a really nice battery as well. Let's go rook c1. So we have 1, 2, 3 defenders of the knight. The most attackers my opponent can add is 3. He can't add any more attackers because this knight can't, like, make contact with my knight, and this rook will take a bit too long to get involved. If something like queen c7, my opponent needs 1, 2 more moves to add another attacker, and he doesn't have time for that. a3 looks nice. But, I don't know. No. We probably just move now. Because our knight is defended. Our knight's defended. Yeah, let's get our queen out the way. The only problem is this d-pawn is a little bit of a liability for the time being. Because we can't advance it to d4 right now. But we may be able to in the future. And it could become an asset if we go something like d4, d5, for example. Creating a passed pawn. But the game is certainly not over. We're up 1 pawn, which is great. That's great to come out of the opening a pawn up. But black does have counterplay. His position is fine. And our extra pawn is not that great, right? Let's say this pawn was back on e3 and this pawn was on d4. Then I would be much happier with the position because our pawn structure would be far more solid. But the problem is, with this structure, our d-pawn is relatively weak. Okay, the first move that comes to mind is knight to a4. That's the first move that comes to mind. I have to be aware of this and also of this, which essentially offers a rook trade. If rook takes, b5, then we can probably take this knight, which means my queen would protect a2. If he takes my knight, I mean, queen g4 looks terrifying. If here, b5, here, I think I can go knight c5. Rook c8 is a little bit annoying, though. Although, no, then we probably have d4. If e5... Well, if e5, we have queen g4 check, picking up the rook. Okay. That should be okay. We need to move the knight. We need to move the knight. And I mean, we don't have a better square than a4, really. I mean, this is miserable. My opponent will just pick up the a2 pawn anyway. I don't think I'm missing anything. And to be honest, our bishop opening up against this knight is probably a bit of an issue for black. That's probably a bit of an issue. Because if I do get to take on there, then his king will be weak forever. And if I, for example, were to be able to get my queen into h6, if these pawns get doubled, it may be the case that this pawn just can't be defended unless my opponent plays something very passive, which I'd be happy about, of course. I guess the only thing I'd have to be concerned about is if my knight ends up, like, let's say these two pieces get traded off, right? I trade off my bishop for his knight. The only thing I'd have to be concerned about is, yes, I'm up a pawn, but is my knight worse than his bishop? That would be something I have to be concerned about. Like, let's say his bishop makes it to the e5 square, and even if the f-pawns get doubled, it would be a powerful bishop. Does my knight get dominated by that bishop? I don't think so. We'd probably have moves like d4 or f4 at the correct time to bully the bishop away, and maybe our knight can find an outpost, or, I don't know, somehow harass the king. But it's interesting to consider that. We could take with the bishop, meaning that my queen immediately defends a2, and we don't have to take on f6 to achieve that. Because, in fairness, this knight kind of sucks, because we're blocking it away from coming forward in all angles. If it wants to rotate via d7, I mean, it's still not getting anywhere useful, and it's weakening this diagonal. So you could reasonably want to take with the bishop. The only thing I don't like is b5 is problematic, because where's my knight going? If it goes to b2, I still lose this pawn. I think I have to take with a rook, so that on b5, I have knight to c5, protected by the rook, and the queen is cut off, only the bishop attacks that, and then I have d4 ready to defend the knight. So I've got to take with a rook. I don't have a choice. My opponent's doing a good job of creating counterplay here, so fair play to him. b5, I feel like that's the only way for black to try and apply pressure, and it's exactly what he does. We could play a3. We could, with the idea being to just kick the bishop. But if we do... Okay, well, if bishop here, we can maybe go e5, although even then our knight would be hanging. I don't really like that. If knight c5 immediately, he takes on a2, and then we're in a bit of trouble. So if we're going to move our knight, we have to take this knight first so that our queen is defending the a2 square, right? I don't really want to trade off the bishop, but it seems like the only reasonable continuation. Let's take. Let's take. So the question is now, is me being a pawn up and doubling his pawn... Whoa, that is not what I expected. That is not what I expected. I didn't think he could do that, and I don't think he can, really. I understand his point. If takes, I don't know, the pawns are very weak. Of course, my bishop is hanging currently, so I need to deal with that. But queen g4, no? Queen g4, g6 is the only move to defend. And then, I mean, queen h4 threatens this, which would be mate. If he tries a move like bishop to c3, well, that just hangs a bishop, right? Queen g4, g6. Maybe queen f4 is the best way to try and get here. If queen h5, defending. Or maybe... I'm trying to think of the best way to sneak in. I mean, I don't have to sneak in, though. I don't have to do it. Because, realistically, if I get a queen trade, the endgame should probably be winning. Not just because I'm up a pawn, but because after g6, my bishop can't really be removed, and black will always have problems with his king as a result of that. The move e5 is very tempting to try and cut the queen off, and then try and sneak in. If here, I think king to h7 might save black, though. Because he covers the h6 square. g4? Rook g... Oh no, g4 might work. Okay, let's see. Queen f4. Well, then queen h5. Yeah, queen h5 defends. Now, I can take here, I know, but I feel like we can do better than that. So queen h4. If queen h5, we of course trade the queens and probably go rook c4 and pick up the pawn. That's completely winning. So here, h5, queen f4. Yeah, I think queen f4. King h7. G4 doesn't work there. G4 doesn't work. Maybe I start with taking on a4. And if queen takes, then I have queen to g5, and you can't stop me from getting in. Maybe that's a good way to do it. Just to grab a pawn. I think I like that, you know. Yeah, I'm actually going to play that. Because this is actually quite a dangerous trap. I don't think black can defend if he takes. I mean, what else can black do? His bishop... Yeah, he takes, but then I just mate him, no? Also, this is useful because it protects my rook. And it stops bishop to d2 potentially trying to defend. And if, like, here, I don't know, queen a3 trying to threaten my rook, I can just go queen h6. If you take, I will take, right? The queen stops any back rank issues. Oh, wait, maybe the idea is here to move the rook. Ah, sorry, and then go bishop to f8. Yeah, I completely missed that. Completely missed that idea. So black can defend. Black can defend. Here. Well, he can't go there. He can't go to c8. So let's say e8. What else can my queen do? Not sure. Not sure. Maybe I should start with h4? Wait, no, I've got a better idea. I've got a better idea. I think... But a2 is a bit of a problem. a2 is a bit of a problem. Okay, well, let's start with queen f4. If the a2 pawn falls, I mean, I wish it wouldn't, but it's not the end of the world. This is also set up in some lines, which I should be aware of. But he has to move the rook for now. Otherwise, he does get mated. So, rook e8 or rook b8 seem like... Oh no, rook b8 can't be played, actually. So yeah, rook e8 or rook a8. Rook a8 makes no sense, so rook e8 seems to be the move. I'm trying to potentially set something up on the f7 square. That's my idea with queen f4. Trying to distract the rook away. Yeah, okay. Now I think h4 I like. basically just giving my king breathing room while potentially threatening h5. Maybe. My idea is, if like queen a2 threatening bishop to d2, then I probably have rook c7 going after the f7 pawn, which is actually really difficult to defend because, again, if you play rook to f8, then queen h6 and you're getting mated because your bishop loses access to this square. I don't think black can actually defend that. Also, maybe I should have considered that on the considered this on the previous move, is something like this. Building a battery like this, so we're not only threatening g7, but also h8. However, if bishop to e5, bishop to e7, if I come here, bishop f8, maybe this? Bishop e7? Oh no, there's no back rank. There's no back rank, because the queen and the rook both defend this square. This is a move I didn't consider. Can it even be played? Take. Yeah, I suppose you can block with a rook, actually. That is actually fine. I did not consider that. Rook c7, going for the original plan. Take. Then there's rook f8. Queen e7. I'm not convinced. I think keeping bishop on the board makes far more sense than trading it. If f6, that should be too weakening. That should be too weakening. I mean, we can take, but then rook f8 looks a bit complicated. e5? Oh no, that hangs a queen. So I can't play that. If f6, probably bishop d6. Then there's e5, though. Then there's e5. And I lose the bishop. So, okay, not that. f6. Bishop d4, again, there's e5. Bishop. There's not really a good square, to be honest. Here. I actually don't love that. I really don't. I think it's unlikely my opponent plays it, though. Yeah, he doesn't. Cool. Well, I feel like we should go for it. Rook c7. Setting ideas on the f7 pawn. Okay. Targeting, defending. There. Let's throw this in. I don't really know if it does anything. I can't actually find a way in, though. I need to try and access f6 with the queen, but the bishop's in the way. And if I go queen to h6, the bishop will just go to f8, and I get into a perpetual. I also can't sack my rook, because the queen will take. Like, if rook take, then queen f6 probably wins. But I don't have that luxury. Whoa. That looks odd. That looks really odd. Queen a5, d4 should be okay. Wait, queen a5, take here. That should be winning, no? I think that wins. If I don't think the queen can take her eyes off of the bishop because I just sack the rook. And the thing is, if this, you can't take here because I take the rook. That's the issue. And then if I get queen f6, if rook e7, queen f6, the king cannot be defended. The f-pawn also can't move to give it an escape. So that should... I mean, even if f5 could be played, I don't think it'd work. g5 does not seem like the right move. I think black had to do nothing. Okay, interesting. I don't know where my way in is, though. That's the only issue. I don't know how I'm going to get in. So I'm going to move my king away from checks first. Maybe this is a good move, targeting a7. Not sure. My opponent cracks. My opponent cracks at the last. And he hangs mate. Wow. A very interesting game. This is going to be really interesting to analyze. And yeah, I mean, in this position, the computer thinks I'm better, but only marginally. It only gives me like a plus 0.5 advantage. I feel like there was a better way to take more of an advantage of the opening. So let's dive into the analysis and see what the computer has to say. Okay, so that was a bit of a wild game. I get 80.1% accuracy, my opponent 70.8%. So not a clean game at all, but a very interesting one. So this is the Euwe Attack. And you can see the computer doesn't like it. The point is de4, knight c3, and typically what happens, and there's many ways for black to go wrong. Like, for example, the natural bishop to g4, as you can see, is not a good move, because h3, we push the bishop away. We have, like, knight to g3, we have h4, we have bishop to g2. We even have knight to f4. And this pawn will be lost, and white gets good expansion on the king side. We're probably going to castle queen side. One of the other main lines is after takes, knight c3, knight f6, knight ge2, bishop f5, knight g3, bishop g6, h4, h6, h5, bishop h7, and queen to e2. And this pawn can't really be defended. Some people do play queen d4, but you just castle, protect this bishop, set up discoveries with the knight. You can't defend this properly, essentially. And it just gets very interesting positions. I play it because Caro Kann players don't expect this. Same reason I play it against the French. But d4 from my opponent. We go knight f3, which is the correct move, attacking the pawn. The computer does like bishop g4, actually. Although this does seem a little bit hasty to be trading the bishop like this, especially because you're putting your pawns on dark squares. Computer wants to go e5 and something like this. Difficult to say. c5 is played, which is by far the most natural move and the most common move. I go c3, which, yes, okay, good. That is the best move. I wanted to go bishop b5 and like knight c6, c3, which the computer loves. But the problem is black can go bishop to d7. And I don't really want to trade this bishop for this bishop. I want to pin the knight because I want to fight for the dark squares by proxy. Because my light squared bishop can't fight for dark squares directly. However, it can stop a different piece from attacking the dark squares, right? If it's situated on a light square. Which is why I play the immediate c3. Now, if black takes this, then knight takes, and my development is fantastic. Black hasn't developed a single piece, and I've got 1, 2, 3 out. The fourth is ready. I'm going to castle, develop the fifth, get my rooks to probably d1, c1, play d4. White is dominant, absolutely dominant. So taking makes no sense. So black needs to try and defend. He goes bishop to g4, knight c6 was apparently better. But on knight c6, I assume just bishop b5, right? And we probably get a very similar position. But bishop g4, bishop b5 check, knight c6, and cd4. Now, it's kind of important to throw in cd4, because you need to be able to move your queen, right? But move the queen with purpose. Now, taking here first was apparently better, and then queen c2. I suppose the point is, now the rook c8 doesn't come in time, so my queen is never vulnerable. And if takes, of course, we take, like here, we just win the rook, because the queen has to block. Again, this is kind of the issue with the king being exposed on this diagonal, right? So this is what the computer wants, and after queen c2, rook c8, knight d4, we get, I suppose, a slightly more favourable version of what we got in the game, because we don't have to trade this knight for this bishop, and the c-file remains shut, so our queen can happily stand on c2. But I did it like this, and queen c2 immediately. Rook c8 baffled me. I thought bishop d7 was by far the best move, and here I can't really win any material, so just castling, and I have good pressure. Rook c8, bishop c6, bishop c6. Computer has no fear, wants to go rook d1. Sorry, rook c1. Of course, if takes, I can just take. The bishop can't move with a useful square. If this, I just drop back. And I'm fine. And white just has good space. The d4 pawn is very weak, and e5 can't be played. That's essentially the point. But my opponent went rook c8. And here, yes, okay. So, as I was saying during the game, I asked you guys to figure out whether you should play knight e5 or knight takes d4. Knight e5 looks very aesthetic, because you're hitting a lot of important squares. But just bishop d7. Black is fine. I'm not winning this pawn. So, white has to take the opportunity to grab the pawn quickly. Bishop d7. And yes, okay, trading is good. Here, I shouldn't have traded a second time. There is queen d3. I missed this move. If this, then I just take here, and black probably has to trade queens with me, and this is just good for me, because I'm up a pawn. And if my opponent trades queens, I take with the bishop, defending this pawn. I'm ready to go knight c3. If rook d8, bishop c2, again, knight c3 is on the way, maybe d3, maybe d4. White's better. But I went bishop c6, which is a mistake. Rook c6, knight c3, e6, which kind of surprised me. Computer wanted e5, taking away my d4 ideas, which I would have liked to have implemented in the game had I had the opportunity. But e6, castles, knight f6. Here, the computer wants d4. And if queen takes, queen e2? A? What's the idea? Let's say bishop e7. Okay. Okay, yeah, so what if the queen moves? Again, right, okay, so this comes with a discovered check. Interesting. So the knight c5 is the best option. Rook fc1? Why would you put the f rook on c1? Rook ac1 looks far more natural. Queen a5. Knight d5. Of course, if pawn takes, then I take with discovered check and I win in exchange. But very interesting position. I did not play d4. I did not see all of that. I went d3. Rook ad1 was apparently better. And d3 allows this. Rook ac1 is the best move. Castles, which I kind of expected queen c7, applying more pressure. And here, queen b1 can be played. If bishop takes, rook takes, queen takes, I have rook c1, and I win my opponent's rook. Very interesting. But okay, we went for this instead. I went queen e2. Computer wanted the queen on b1, which I suppose kind of protects everything that ended up being a problem in my position. It just looks very passive, so I went queen e2 because it looks more active. Queen a5, that was a good move from my opponent. I didn't really give that the consideration I should have. I was more so looking at queen c7, and I was like, well, knight b5, and I've got a good position. I do. Like, this is under attack, this is under attack, this is under attack. I'm good. I missed queen a5. Good move. Knight a4 is the only response to hold any kind of advantage, because if you retreat the knight to d1, let's say, then just queen a2. And what am I doing? Like, I can do this, but queen b3, bishop f6, pawn f6, knight e3. I'm down a pawn, and I don't really have amazing compensation. Sure, a7 is weak, but, like, this pawn's also weak. So, instead I go knight a4, and I just had to calculate here. Rook fc8 is apparently the better move. And then I get to go d4, or I can take bishop f6, pawn f6, d4. And again, b5 is an idea. I have d5. I also have knight c5 in some lines. This one, not so much. My opponent takes on c1. I take back b5. I go bishop f6, which is an inaccuracy. Knight c5 is better. If queen takes... Oh, I have rook a1. I missed this. That is such a cool idea. I don't have to rush. Wow, that's really cool. I took on f6, which is the wrong move. I didn't really want to trade my bishop off, but I didn't see a better option. Here, ba4 astounded me. Absolutely astounded me. I thought this was clearly the move. And after knight c5, rook c8, I was preparing d4. Because rook c8 looks natural, but d4, and it sets a trap of e5 as well, trying to undermine the pawn supporting my knight. I have queen to g4 check, picking up the rook. This is what I was calculating. I didn't even consider my opponent taking on a4, because we have to move queen g4. And g6 is the only move. I mean, you can go g5, but like, that's terrible. ba4 is not the best. Queen f4 is slightly better. But okay, we take queen a4. Now, what I was calculating was queen f4. What didn't I like? What didn't I like? Well, here is actually bishop d2. And I have to find queen c7, offering a queen trade. And things get very, very messy. Very messy. So, if queen to h4, again there's bishop d2, stopping me from coming to h6. Doesn't quite work. Even if my opponent doesn't find that, he can just do this. And if I try to infiltrate, bishop f8, and where's my advantage? At g6, I go ba4. And queen a4 is a miss because of queen f4. So that is the right idea. After rook e8, I played h4. Low on time, I couldn't figure out what to do. Based on some of the things that I was saying during the game, however, you should be able to find the move for white here that poses black the most problems. So pause the video, try and find it. If I had more time, I think I would have found it, but it was just very low. It's not h4, it's bishop d4. And this is what I was saying during the game, is if I could create a battery with my queen and my bishop, you can't defend g7 and h8 at the same time. So the point is that both of these squares can't be defended, right? So the only move really for black here is bishop d2, trying to deflect my queen, queen e5, f6, queen f6, e5, bishop e5, rook e5, queen e5. If bishop c1, apparently this is winning because, yeah, you pick up the bishop. And I suppose if something like king f6, here, it's a complicated endgame, but white should be winning. I didn't know what to do. I went h4. I panicked a little bit on low time. Bishop e7. Here, apparently, I can take and go h5. I suppose I'm threatening h6. Oh, if you take, I have queen g5. And then queen f6. If rook here, I have rook c7, cutting off the escape. Interesting. I went... What did I go for? I went bishop e5, keeping the bishops on the board. And here, I thought f6 was the best move. Weakening, but probably the best move. The point being, the two squares I want to go to... Also, I just realized this hangs a queen. Sorry, hangs the bishop. Is if I want to go here, e5. And that's not good. I have to sack my bishop. So my best idea is bishop c3. And I think things are very complicated. I probably just have to try and regroup. But my opponent takes on a2. Here, rook a1 is the best move. Not gonna lie, I didn't even see this as a possibility. I went rook c7. Which looks good. I'm setting up ideas that ultimately won me the game. Queen a3, good move, defending the bishop. Because let's say black plays a5, my plan was rook e7, queen f6. You can't defend, mate. You can give me some checks, or you can sack your queen. The computer wants black to sack the queen, but of course that's game over. Oh, also this just hangs a queen, so queen b1, king h2, and again you just can't stop, mate. But queen a3, good idea. h5, not the best move, but I didn't know what to do. Computer wants this, but I thought bishop f8, and like, I'm just repeating. This doesn't get me anywhere. Computer wants g3. I couldn't tell you why. Don't know. It seems like it can't really come up with the correct idea. I went h5, just trying to ask questions, and actually, this is the best move. Really? I mean, if you take, then of course you're getting mated, right? I thought black had to do nothing. Let's say he just does nothing with this. Then hg6. Oh, right. Okay, this is the problem. I have access to h8. I didn't even see that, to be honest. I just played h5 to try and be annoying and try and cause some problems. Again, on low time. But my opponent finds the best move, g5, so fair play. I went queen f3, keeping the pressure, defending d3. And my opponent goes h6. Again, the best move. Fair play. Let's say he again plays a random move. Then I go h6. And I suppose long term, his king is just so weak. Maybe I have bishop f6 ideas to try and get a trade and cause issues. All kinds of things. But yeah, my opponent plays very accurately. I go king h2. Honestly, no idea. No idea how to improve my position. Computer's favorite move, g3, doesn't really do anything. Rook b7, I don't really know what that does. It also likes king h2, but like there's not really a whole lot I can do here. Here, of course, my opponent blunders mate in 1, trying to facilitate trades. A little bit panicky, for sure. But to be fair, what can black do if he starts pushing the a-pawn? Because these pieces are all frozen. They're all frozen. The king can't do anything. Because if the queen moves, let's say, I don't know, queen a2, then again, I do this. So the queen can't move. If the rook moves, well, okay, you can actually move the rook. But, I don't know. Rook d7? I don't really know what that does. I guess stopping bishop d6. But it's not obvious. It's not obvious what to do. I mean, you're not really going to advance this pawn, because then you're going to have issues on g7. But yeah, my opponent just blunders, which honestly lets me off the hook, and we have mate in 1. It's chess is cruel sometimes. Chess can be very cruel, and we've had it against us in the speedrun, so you know, people make mistakes, and the luck goes our way this time. But yeah, I don't know if my opponent did this. What are white's plans? I really couldn't tell you. Let's see. Okay, what does the computer think? Rook d7, a5, g3, a4, rook b7, queen c5, d4, queen a3. I mean, these are not very impressive plans, are they? There's good pressure, but like, these plans are not that special. I don't know. A win's a win, though. A win's a win. And I definitely could have handled the position a bit better had I used my time more effectively. I hope I would have found some of the better moves, like taking on e7, going h5 in this position. You know, setting up the battery here with like bishop d4 and queen e5 or queen f6. Maybe I would have found those ideas had I not had a minute on the clock, but a very interesting game nonetheless. If you want to see me using the Caro Kann to very great effect, check out the video up here. And if you want to see the previous episode of the speedrun, check out the playlist down there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in one of those videos.